it's so weird to see see it happen to them over and over and over again, because they really haven't been that clean all weekend. It's just been happening to them over and over again. But the thing is, they've been good enough, even with the small mistakes, to where all of the teams that they've played against, they've been able to just beat with superior gameplay, even with the tiny deaths. But against Perplexed, we saw that earlier today, that's not going to be enough in any case whatsoever. So it has to be lights out gameplay from Echo if they want to have any chance of taking Perplexed on here.
Yeah, so it looks like both of the tanks are gathering this huge first pull here. We see the disc bubble being dropped immediately by Salia as all of those mobs are being gathered. All the defensives are being used as all of the explosives just spawning all over the place. The healers are trying to deal with the explosives while the damage dealers are trying to finish off the trash here, as all of them are going into raging at the same time. Divine Field and Now both trying to kite out this pack, as the Ring of Peace is also coming out by the monks, helping them with the kiting. But the mobs need to die very soon. There we go, actually died at the same time for both of them. How close.
That was... They died at the exact same time. That was really insane. And I was gonna say, it seemed like Echo was doing a better job controlling the mobs. They just didn't have quite the same overall AoE damage there on that pack. They weren't quite as clean in pulling it down. But the fact that Now was able to keep those mobs grouped together at the end of the pull, whereas from Perplexed they actually had to like spread them out a little bit, it allowed Echo to kill the pull at the exact same time from them. Now, both teams opting to go for the same strategy here. However, it looks like Echo has already pulled the boss, while one of their DPS players, Mirez, has gone down to pull the 2 Plague Boars into the boss to get a little bit of free extra damage on the boss. Perplexed still hasn't quite pulled it yet, so it's going to be a tiny bit of an advantage for Echo here going into the first boss.
And Echo also is using their Bloodlust for this boss. They didn't even use it for this very first trash pull, so they're having extra damage on the boss. And now we see an innovation here coming out of Perplexed. They're pulling the boss up this area here instead of at the entrance, like we see all of these other two teams are doing, and Echo is doing as well.
Look how many Plague Borers they have. They just don't have the 2 from the front. They have the 2 from the back as well. They've got all 4 Plague Borers there. Is this just going to kill the boss instantly? How much damage is that going to do?
The boss is dropping incredibly low. You can see how much lower he's dropping because of those debuffs that are being applied by the Plague Borers when they explode. But Echo's still slightly ahead because they were engaging the fight first, and they also had the Bloodlust advantage, just getting this extra damage. So I really like this Perplexed strategy here, getting this extra damage off. But because I think if they would have had the Bloodlust as well on Perplexed side, then this strategy actually might have been faster. But that tiny difference, because Echo managed to do this first big pull without it, just gave them a little bit of an advantage here in the boss damage.
Yeah, that on top of the extra setup time required to pull those extra 2 Plague Borers from the back, Echo got 10 to 12% of the boss's HP down in that time as well. So I really like the innovation and the strategy to try to make it go faster than before. And maybe they were even like saving this strategy for later on in the tournament too, because we've seen plenty of Perplexed Plaguefall runs earlier on. But yeah, it just didn't quite do exactly what they wanted to do here without having that Bloodlust, like you said.
Yeah, we do have a 4% trash difference in favor of Perplexed though, so maybe that is something that is going to go in their favor later on, even though they did finish off the boss later. But now they're dealing with these slimes. These slimes can be dangerous because of explosive and raging as well, so definitely want to make sure you deal with all of them as they're spawning, and that's why we also see the Ring of Peace coming out of Swagfist, making sure Divine Field has the ability to kite these mobs as they're all raging at the same time. And now they're going backwards, dealing with some more trash. As far as I remember, the last time they tried to proc that second Pride, the 40% Pride, back there, and then they skipped it by shadow melting off the aggro and move on. While Echo, on the other hand, is just moving on. They're not going backwards at all, not dealing with any of those slimes in that boss room.
Yeah, there's a little bit of extra travel time because of Perplexed strat, but the trash that they deal with to get their mob count is so much easier and so much more clumped up than the trash that Echo is currently dealing with that it actually makes this strategy quite worth it. There's a lot less chance of something going wrong with Perplexed strategy here. And they do spawn that second Prideful here. It'll be a very easy Shadow Meld skip afterward because this room is clear. And then I remember before what they did for their trash percentages. They pulled, I believe, just 1 trash pack here in this next room for extra trash count, but I'm not really sure if they're going to need to do that now with the extra 2 Plague Borers.
Yeah, we'll see, as Echo on their side did wait a little bit there. I think they were just waiting for a certain timing before they were moving on. They are skipping the Plague Binder and the Congealed Slime. Don't want to deal with that damage reduction aura from the slime at all. So they're just completely walking past it as they're proccing their 40% Pride here as well. Looks like they're also trying to Shadow Melt there, so they're just moving on, jumping through this, also using the Ink Cap here and the Fear Sigil to deal with these tentacles. So it looks like they're just going to be skipping this whole area, Shadow Melting off. Good job there, making sure they're not getting hit by Now's debuff. That's why he was standing still completely, making sure everyone knows where it's going. But it looks like Maris didn't manage to get out of combat, so they have to use out of combat rest to get Maris back up. And this is the first mistake by Echo here.
I'm not really sure I've ever seen them pull off that Shadow Meld skip cleanly. Every single time Echo's gone to this particular section of the dungeon and gone for this Shadow Meld skip, it's gone wrong for them. And I don't know what they could do to fix that, but it's just something that's a problem. This time, at least Zaylee didn't have to solo the mini-boss down, but yeah, just the extra 5 seconds on the board is pretty unfortunate for them. Perplexed now getting to this bomb section of the platform, and because they used their Shadow Meld to skip that second Pride earlier on, they're going to actually have to deal with these tentacles, but they do it in a pretty interesting way, right? They split up the 2 Plague Borers, 1 for each tentacle, and they die pretty quickly on the run without them having to commit any major damage to them.
I'm not actually sure if this was intentional, because I remember them completely skipping those tentacles in the past, if I remember correctly. It is 2 days ago that they played this dungeon, and they might have just switched up their strategy as well, so I might be wrong on this, but I think they might have still been in combat with this tentacle unintentionally because of what happened, but not completely sure, as they're now gathering the trash here in this second boss area. They're gathering everything on top of each other except the Congealed Slime, because of course they don't want to deal with the damage reduction aura again.
Yeah, but there's going to be a slight difference in strategy here between Perplexed and Echo. They're both going to be spawning this third Prideful, but Perplexed is going to have a much easier time dealing with this third Prideful because they still have that mini-boss up at the top of the staircase in order to help deal with it. It, of course, spawns 2 of those Plague Borers, which is why they've left it alive, and then they'll cleave down both the mini-boss and the Prideful with the Plague Borers. However, Echo is still further along in the dungeon here. They just have now spawned the Pride. Perplexed only just now spawning the Pride, so about a 10-second difference or so in terms of where they're actually spawning their trash. But keep an eye on how useful this particular strategy is here. The Manifestation of Pride is going to be pulled up towards the mini-boss eventually, and then they'll be able to easily cleave it down once those Plague Borers spawn.
Yeah, and this is interesting as well because of the way they killed the trash, they cannot actually use the haste zone that was dropped by that red slime. So they have to move the Pride away. Can't use that extra haste because of the boss jumping around from platform to platform. They don't want to pull that boss. And as you mentioned, Perplexed going backwards with that Pride mob, making sure they kill the mini boss on top of the Pride. Just getting some extra efficiency here, cleaving 2 high HP targets down at the same time.
And of course, Ashine is also playing the Necrolord anyways, so he can suck up that red pool on the ground and give his team the haste buff anyways. But yeah, not having both haste buffs available to you doesn't help too much. But look at this. Both teams able to pull the boss at roughly exactly the same time with those Plague Borers going down, with the only real difference between the teams being that extra 4% trash on the board that Perplexed has from being able to cleave down the mini-boss with the Borers. This is going to be neck and neck so far in the dungeon. These teams are both playing fantastically.
Yeah, so they are now actually using it on Echo's side. They actually pulled the boss backwards exactly to this red pool on the ground to make sure they are using this haste zone because they don't have a Necrolord on their side compared to Perplexed. Actually having the Necrolord on Ashine, as you mentioned, well, Fragrance is playing Venthyr, so they don't have any Necrolords on Echo's side, not having the ability to use to absorb that slime for the haste buff. And it looks like they're not playing the strategy that we've seen by so many other teams. So many teams just ignored the Plague Bomb here, just completely ignored it, made sure they used the Disc Bubble plus the AMZ by the DK to just go through that damage, just absorb it and survive. But looks like they're not going for that. Maybe maybe because Sally didn't have Pain Sap, and I'm not sure if you can survive it as the priest if you don't have Pain Sap yourself. So maybe that's why they decided to just finish off the bomb here.
Yep, and that makes total sense here. The bomb's about to go off for Perplexed here. Everyone's going to stack inside the double bubble there, make sure they're totally fine. Personals are popped, nobody goes down. Although Ashine drops a little bit low, but he'll be able to be topped up by Ryson pretty easily there. It is important to mention here that Perplexed did actually lose a lot of boss damage at the start of this pull by having to deal with that 1 Congealed Slime that reduces the amount of damage enemies next to it are by 75%. So they still are quite a bit behind on boss damage, but still, how close these teams are, even with that slight inconsistency there, 10% apart. it's going to be incredibly close, and this next section of trash is probably going to make or break the dungeon for both teams.
Yeah, this is so close between those two. I just want to quickly say that it's Ryzen actually that plays Necrolord for Perplexed. Ashan is also playing that Venthyr DK.
Oh, yeah,
so both of
right.
the DKs playing Venthyr. It is Ryzen. So their healer who switched to Necrolord, making sure they do get those buffs. But yeah, both of the teams moving on to the same trash area as well. They're taking a little bit of a different path, but both of them going into this middle area, dealing with this middle trash pack. It can be dangerous. They're all low HP here, those mobs, because they're fighting each other, but still a lot of HP left on the mobs. And you also have Raging as well as Explosive that you have to deal with. And this whole platform is just very, very tiny. So with the pools that are spawning here that even further decrease the amount of room that you have, can be causing some issues.
Yep, Echo dealing with the pool a little bit more cleanly than Perplexed. It's going down about 10 seconds earlier, but still, it's still neck and neck here. Now, of course, there is still a difference here. Echo needs to go off to this side pack in order to get a little extra trash percentage that they need before they can complete the dungeon, whereas Perplexed can move straight along to these double ambusher packs in the middle. And I know they've done it in the past, but with how close this dungeon is, you have to wonder, are they going to be going for the triple pull here with the ambusher into both of these packs? If they're able to pull that off, it'll secure them a significant lead, and there you go, Divinefield leaping into the other pack, Ryzen knocking it away into the other pack as well, so everything is nice and stacked, and they'll be able to AoE this down. And this is Perplexed securing a significant advantage, able to get that trash lead, going to be spawning this fourth Prideful for the third boss very easily, while Echo is still cleaning up some of the extra trash percentage they missed from not going earlier on in the dungeon.
Wow, that was actually so beautifully done by Perplexed there. The way they gathered it up and the way they just delayed their different kinds of utilities that they have. First, we saw the stun coming in by Swagfist, then we saw the Fear Sigil, we saw the Dragon's Breath by Wolf's Disco, making sure they're interrupting all of those casts that are coming out of these trash mobs. Just beautifully done. And the way they stack them up exactly on top of each other as well. Really, really well done, as they're now dealing with this Pride mob, the 80% Pride mob. So yeah, this was a pretty big advantage that they now got from doing this pull specifically. And now they also have the Pride buff for the boss, making sure they kill the boss a little bit faster, while Ek, on the other hand, just doing the same thing in more pulls, just everything a little bit slower as they now proc their Pride mob.
It's also important to mention that Perplexed did commit their Bloodlust to making that pull happen and keeping it consistent, whereas Echo has the Bloodlust available for the boss, which is significant on Tyrannical, right? Bosses take a long time to get through on Tyrannical. Even with the gear level these guys have, they have to chunk through a lot of HP. So that will be a big deal. Echo will be able to catch up and make some time with that Prideful buff on the boss. But Perplexed has pulled the boss so much faster. They're going to have it below 60% by the time Echo even has a chance to pull.
Yeah, and Echo actually struggling a little bit on this Pride mob. It's still 40% HP approximately, and Celia is completely out of mana, dropping low as well. This might be very hard for them to finish as they use their defensive cooldowns, staying inside that bubble from the DK as well to make sure they're alright. Touch of Death being used by Mares to make sure they're not wiping to this, as they now have the Pride, and it looks like they're also pulling the trash pack on top of the boss. So this is going to save them a little bit of time, but still not as fast as Perplexed by just pulling all of this trash together.
Yeah, I mean, this is really just going to show you the different trash strats that both teams are going for. Perplexed seems like they have a little bit more efficient way to deal with the trash. That being said, Echo is catching up incredibly quickly on the boss percentage. They were 50% behind when they pulled the boss, but look at the differences now, pulling to within 25% with that burst of Bloodlust plus the Prideful buff on the boss. They are definitely catching up, but a lot of that instant burst damage is now gone with the cooldowns running out and the Prideful buff running out in a few seconds here. We still have a pretty established lead for Perplexed, not to mention the extra 5 seconds worth of death timers on the board.
Yeah, those 5 seconds might actually matter, considering how close those two teams are right now. The trash difference is not actually going to be a big deal, because I'm pretty sure both of the teams do have enough to go down, right? So it shouldn't be a problem. Perplexed actually, I think they might need one of the blobs on this side. I'm not really sure. It's going to be close, right? We don't see the exact percentage. Unfortunately, we don't see the exact mob count. But sometimes you might actually want to have those blobs on the side, considering they're also playing Necrolord. But doesn't look like they're going to the right. So just immediately going to this boss room, making sure they're dealing with this trash, with those two trash mobs first before they move on. While Echo still fighting this boss, just slightly behind. But it's gonna matter on this last boss room, because Perplexed just has so much damage ready to deal with this one.
Yep, for sure. And we've seen how this room goes. Usually this is a pretty dangerous room, especially on explosive affix, because so many explosives spawn in the back. But you're going to see Rice in here tab targeting pretty much every explosive. It is his job and his job alone to deal with as many of those explosives that spawn. And it's really easy for healers to deal with it now because they only have about 100 HP. So if you so much as look at them incorrectly, they'll go down. But this is the AoE pull here. I mean, they're just playing so well here, making sure nothing goes wrong for themselves.
Yeah, and we also see how they prioritize the damage on the mini-boss here as well, because the mini-boss does have the most HP, Ikkis, who is just standing there teleporting around once in a while. So we don't even see them just randomly AoEing into these devoted ads. They're just making sure they're getting as much damage on Ikkis as possible while just randomly cleaving down the rest of the ads. And very well done, as they are now finishing off Ikkis first before they're finishing off any of these other mobs here. So now they just have to cleave them down. Looks like Echo is also in the same room now, and they're also doing the same pull, but just a little bit behind. And they also have another death, so they're up to 2 deaths at this point.
And there you go, Manifestation of Pride now spawned for Perplexed, so they're good on trash count, and all that's left between them and a 1-0 lead in the series is taking down the final boss here. And they're not out of the woods just yet, right? This is a pretty difficult boss. If they aren't able to get through this first phase without beating the second Infected Rain, it could be an issue for their healer, but it'd be really weird to see a team that's been playing as perfect and as just composed as Perplexed has been today to make such a silly mistake like that.
Yeah, they did skip that Pride mob, so we saw them just immediately engage the boss after Shadow Melting off the aggro. We did see the Combustion and PI go onto the mage here on Wolf Disco, making sure they have a lot of damage here. Initially, getting the boss to 66%, so she phases into this intermission phase. This intermission phase always takes the same amount of time, actually, so there's no way to speed this up. But they can make sure they're dealing with these devoted ads while this is happening. The devoted ads can also theoretically be ignored, but because it is explosive, you still want to deal with them, making sure you spawn less of the explosives so the healer can do more boss damage, not having to worry about them.
Yep, for sure. Second intermission, first intermission ending now for Perplexed at 16 minutes and 48 seconds, and Echo's not even in the first intermission yet. All eyes right now are on Perplexed. If they're able to cleanly finish off this boss with no major mistakes, they are going to win this first game. But this is going to be a dangerous phase. The only offensive cooldown that they have available to them right now is that combustion from the mage. Nobody else is going to be doing any damage here. They're going to have to get it to 33% before the next Infectious Rain, or they're going to be in some trouble. But you can see both Disc Priest Bubble and AMZ being used on that one Infectious Rain so they can keep everyone topped and healthy for this phase. They're now in the second Malignant spawn. If the boss starts casting that second Infectious Rain, this could be a scary scenario, but no dice here. Going into the second intermission, nice and clean, and they'll have everything available for the final phase.
I mean, what a run by Perplexed. I mean, just look at the time. We're just 17 minutes into this dungeon, and they're about to finish off this last boss. 0 deaths by Perplexed as well. Just such an incredibly clean run. I mean, it's really easy. It's really going to be hard for them to make a mistake here. This is the last phase, which is the most dangerous one, though. So still have to make sure they have enough boss damage. They want to make sure they're dodging the tentacles that are spawning out of here, and they still want to deal with those ads. But Perplexed just showing how good they are and how incredibly well prepared, just having such an insanely fast time in this Plaguefall.
And they're showing up when they needed it the most. The best Plaguefall time that we've seen all weekend was a 20-minute and 30-second time from Perplexed themselves. And look at the timer, 18:15, over 2 minutes faster than their best time. They are showing up when they need it the most, Perplexed, taking a 1-0 victory in this series.
Honestly, I think that we just have a lot of Perplexed stuff to highlight. Echo was doing a lot of really good moves. I felt like their first pull was excellent, but then Perplexed started doing some, as their namesake would say, perplexing stuff. First and foremost, it's tanking Glob Grog on that little island. That was kind of weird to me. I do think it's actually really good whenever you put it in the perspective of they still have all those blobs available to them in the middle of the area. They had the Plague Belchers walking around. And so it makes the blobs that spawn on Glob Grog have to funnel in. So they're able to get like good Ring of PCC and like Frost Novas and stuff like that on it. But then they completely skip the second area. And you're like, where are they going? And they do this M0 style skip, which allows them to not have to pull any of the trash in the second area, which is normally deemed pretty efficient due to the Plague Boars. But they got the Plague Boars into the first boss, so it didn't matter. Then they're like, all right, we're going to do this even more wild pull. And they're able to pull triple ambusher on a raging set of affixes, which those ambushers, for those who don't know, what they melee your tank so incredibly hard. I was shocked that they were able to pull all 3 together like that, and they were able to pull it off. Of course, they committed their bloodlust, but that saves them effectively a second pull. So that's the biggest time save they could have had in the dungeon.